Even so, all of us together can create a better land. Leave the past, a new tomorrow waits for all who understand. La 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 la. Leave the past, a new tomorrow waits for all who understand. Peace gave us the mountains, peace gave us the sky. Nightly when starlight enfolds us, peace is its lullaby. Amen. Peace gave us the morning, peace gave us the sun. Bird songs that call us to welcome day and fresh labors begun. Amen. Peace gave us the seasons, peace gave us the rain, cool clouds that gather to bless us, mist hands that soothe away pain. Amen. Peace gave us our heart's love, peace gave us our smiles, rays of God's presence within us, light that all strife reconciles. Amen.
Swami Kriyananda shared the following message during a Christmas meditation in 1977. Divine Mother has asked me, Swamiji, to convey these words to you. She says, I am very pleased with all of you. I am very pleased with what you are doing, but don't live in littleness, in petty things, little thoughts, little worries, little ambitions. Live for me, for my love. I am your mother through all eternity. Nothing else matters. You were born to commune with me. For no other reason were you born. Live in my consciousness. Everything else is dust. I know all of your thoughts. Your devotion is very pleasing to me. You are my children. You are all very dear to me. Live more in me. Live in my love. Yes, build a community, but in the sense of communion with me. My children, I am always with you. I am just behind your thoughts, just behind your feelings. I am with you every second. Let no other thought come between me and thee.
Again, it's a joy to greet you on this very sacred evening, the third anniversary of the earthly passing of Swami Kriyananda ji and also his spiritual liberation. As Nivritti said, my name is Dharmarajan, and my wife Dharmini, and I lead the center in in Chennai, which is in South India. Chennai used to be called Madras, if you might know it by that name. And so Dharmini sends her regrets that she can't be here tonight. We're actually here visiting her mother. And so we have such a short visit here in Seattle. And so because of that, she's at home cooking dinner for a few friends, and so she can't be here. In fact, knowing that we were going to be here, we're only in Seattle for basically 2.5 days, I wrote to Freeman and Padma and said, you know, we're hoping to come for the celebration on the 21st. And anyway, you can see how it all ended up. Of course, I'm sorry to miss them, but luckily we got a chance to meet at the village a few weeks ago before this. So, in fact, before we go further, I wanted to share a video of Swamiji and also just give you a little bit of a glimpse of, I see you already have had a glimpse of this. This was the celebrations of Swamiji's Moksha, which again means spiritual liberation, have started in India basically early in the morning, our time. Nayaswami's Jaya and Dhyana, for those of you who know them, who are the spiritual directors of Ananda India. They're both at Ananda Village right now, but they did a broadcast. They had to get up at 7 a.m. and, basically brush their teeth and then turn on the video camera and do a broadcast to India for the evening meditation. And so this was 7 a.m. our time. This was the altar in Ananda Chennai Center for Swamiji. And if you can show the next one, Suryadas, a few of the core members after the meditation stayed behind, and just I wanted you to see their faces. This is our little center in Chennai, and as I said, these are some of our core members, and I'll talk a little bit more about what's going on in Chennai, but it's like all you have to think is going back in time. This center is 3 years old, so remember Seattle, Ananda Seattle, when it was 3 years old, for those of you who were here. I think that Seattle started in, was it 88, maybe?
It was actually a little earlier than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So think of this as earlier than that plus 3 years. So anyway, we'll now have a video of Swamiji speaking. This was around the celebration of his 80th birthday, which was in 2006.
And in Beverly Hills in 1949, there was a garden party. Well, you know what garden parties are like, especially in a wealthy town like Beverly Hills. This was a very wealthy family, and you know what they would expect when he was asked to get up and speak. Thank you, the gracious hostess, and thank you for everybody, and thank you for coming, and it's been a wonderful afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed it, and so on. Huh? I was slightly almost embarrassed the way he spoke. It was so completely out of tune with the gathering. He was shouting with such fervor. He gave a talk so powerful, more powerful than any other lecture I have ever heard. And he tried to inspire people to start communities. And he said, thousands of youths must go north, south, east, west, everywhere to spread this ideal of simple living, plain living, God-high thinking. I was slightly embarrassed because they never did invite him back. Didn't surprise me at all. But he said afterwards, God spoke through me, and I knew that was the case. And God is not a respecter of time or circumstance. And in all that crowd, there were at least 800 people there. Only I started a community. And when I heard that talk, I vowed that I would do my best to make this ideal a reality. I remember in 1958, I said to Dayamata, when are we going to start communities? Her answer was, frankly, I'm not interested. Well, okay, that wasn't their mission, but I knew it was mine. And I am so grateful that God has made this possible. Don't think I did it. I just was the willing slave. I did my best, yes, we've all done our best. But it's such an amazing thing. What a struggle it has been. It was not easy. We didn't have any money. I didn't have any money. My father had money, but he never gave me any money. Not for this. But somehow it came. I slightly scolded Divine Mother. I said, you know I don't want money. You don't know. I don't even like it. Why are you making me work so hard to earn money just so I can build these buildings? And yet I found at the end of it, when we passed that test, and we had everything we needed, and the community got off to a good start, and then other people came in, and finally it became a community effort, not just my effort to get it started. I found that what my gain was not the money to do these things, it was inner strength. When you do what God wants you to do, and you can feel it in your heart to some extent, I knew I had to do it. And no matter how many difficulties and so many people were counseling me, it's too hard, that means God doesn't want it. I said if he didn't want it, he would make it impossible, but he's making it barely possible, so I have to keep trying. And the thing is that it did happen. And I think this is a miracle. And to have so many people coming from so many places, we have thousands of friends all over the world. It's a great fulfillment for me. It's a wonderful thing to see that so many people have taken his message and understood how they can apply it and the importance of applying it in their own lives. So, the poor you have always with you, but me you have not always. Me, after all, Christ lived 2,000 years ago. Yogananda passed away in 1952. And whatever you get from me, I'm going into India. It's in your hearts that you've got to look. That inspiration of God's presence in your hearts. When you get it, and it doesn't come always, but when you do, hang on to it. It's the most priceless treasure you can have. Hang on to any feeling of love, any feeling of joy, any feeling of the divine. Go off to yourself. Go off in the woods. Don't think, as I have done in the beginning, I don't do it now, but I used to do it. I used to think, oh, it's so natural that I don't need to hang on to it. It'll always be with me, but it won't be always with you. Until you make yourself his friend, he will then become your friend. When you live for him, he will show that he's always lived for you. But you know, you've been turning your back on him for so many incarnations. Why should he come running just because you say, please come to me? He wants to be sure. But when you've passed your tests, when you've shown that in all troubles and trials, under all difficulties, you still love him. Can you hear me? Then he will come. And two beautiful passages in the Gita. One is in the 2nd chapter where Krishna speaks to Arjuna as if smiling. It takes a lot of sincerity to win that smile outwardly. But as I said in my song, Love is a Magician, I knew all the time. No, how was it? I knew all the while. Oh, come on, somebody tell me. I know it perfectly well. Love is all I know, sun rays on the snow. I can't sing that song. I can't sing it, it moves me too deeply. But I knew all the while that your smile was with me. And that is what also the Gita says. And when his smile is there, that shows that you've advanced. When you're aware of that smile, he's always smiling. And I would look into my Guru's eyes, and when he was scolding even, I would see there was no scolding in his eyes. There was only love and support and hope that I would understand and learn. So that is one thing. And another beautiful thing in the Gita is where Krishna speaks of himself, or Arjuna speaks of him as friend. Friendship with God is in some ways the most beautiful. Even as the Divine Mother, there's a certain obligation in that kind of love. This is my child, I have to help him. But a friend doesn't have to help you. He helps you because he wants you, because he's one with you. So I would suggest that even if you think of God as Lord, Almighty, God knows what else, or as Father, or as Mother, think of him also as friend. He's on your side. He wants you to win. And all he's doing is waiting for you who have turned your back on him for millions of years to finally turn back and say, Lord, I am thine. Thou art mine. Joy to you.
It's so wonderful to just have Swamiji back with us just like that. As Nivritti said in the beginning, that none of us would be here if it weren't for Swami Kriyananda. And actually, Joel, you can probably just close the computer. Thank you. Sorry, Surya Das. Like many of you, and interestingly, my first visit to an Ananda community was Ananda Seattle. And in fact, without Ananda Seattle, you could say, I wouldn't be here, not just Swamiji, but this very community. It was a member of Ananda Seattle, Satyaki, who was then Craig Brockschmidt, for those of you who know him or lived with him then, who came to my college. And he was working for Microsoft then, I think maybe even as now, and he spoke at my college on computer science, and I was involved in the computer science club. And he came to give his talk, and I was listening and so on. And of course, it was senior year, and I was kind of leaning back in my chair and rather cash about the whole thing. And then he said, you will notice that if you sit up straight, you will feel more energy flowing through your body. In fact, he said, whenever you always look for those people in the crowd who are sitting up straight, and those are always the sharpest guys in the room. And so I kind of sat up straight, and I found to my surprise that I actually did. I felt more awake and present. So I thought, oh, there's something to this. Then he said, if you are needing to be creative in your computer programming, one thing that you can do to help raise your energy is to walk in place and say, I'm awake and ready, like this. I am awake and ready. Now just imagine, a computer science symposium of 80 people, and here's, I am awake, and people were, blushing for him, and, and I thought, wow, this guy has guts. And then he said, or you can say, I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic. And so, some people were eyeing the door and seeing if they could make a quick getaway. And I was so impressed because I thought, this is something that no one would ever do. No one would have the courage to do something to show their point. This was a good point. You will feel more positive and energetic and enthusiastic, and he didn't care. And he also was very successful in computer science, and so he'd established himself in that way professionally. So at the very end of the evening, I had a chance to speak to him, and I said, so, what is it that you do? Because there had to be something, because he was very successful, like other successful computer people I had met, and he was very smart, and yet, I fancied myself somewhat smart and somewhat successful. I hadn't even graduated yet, but I was feeling rather proud of myself. And, you know, he was very, I didn't even have the word, but he was centered. And, you know, whereas I was, you know, had the nervous leg and kind of, yeah, what's next? You know, just all my energy was all over the place. I had no interest in peace. Because to me, peace meant, you know, lying on the couch, you know, with the remote control. And that was like on the sidelines. I wanted to be in the game. But he was just poised like a martial artist, that he had all his energy under his command, that he could spring into action if he needed to. But he wasn't wasting energy frivolously. So that's in my mind how I, you know, sort of understood what I was seeing. And so I said, well, what is it that you do? And he said, well, have you read Autobiography of a Yogi? And there's this place, Ananda, and you should go to the website. And so on. The website had been up, I think, for about 5 months at that point, because this was, again, in 1996. And so that's my story. Any one of us could, you know, come and share each of our stories. It's always amazing when there's that spark that reconnects us. Again, that spark that comes from Yoganandaji, that spark that comes through Swami Kriyananda, through Ananda. I envisioned it once that, you know, as Satyaki said, do you want to read the Autobiography of a Yogi? And I said, yes. Or even before that, my heart was yearning for something. And it was only actually, it was that same week that someone, through a long discussion, helped me to realize that there might actually be a God after all. So it was a big week for me. And so it was, I almost wondered if it's for any of us that, you know, Yogananda says, oh look, Dharmarajan wants to come back. Somebody, you know, go get him. And because we each have that friend, that way that, you know, Satyaki found me, and Satyaki found Ananda because someone at East West Bookstore in Seattle put a little flyer for a Learn to Meditate class at the Seattle Temple in his wife's shopping bag. And so, you know, the causation goes on and on and on, backwards, and then, of course, forward. So again, it's always a joy to think back on our early times and those times of connection, which sometimes seem so accidental, or maybe we don't realize what we have at first, and yet we see how our lives have changed. Swami Kriyananda has left us such a legacy of his completed works, but also his living presence. So both are there. And so I don't want to emphasize one too much over the other, but of course, all of the books that he has written, 149 books. When I came to the path, I had lots of questions, lots of intellectual doubts, lots of wondering, how does this apply to the rest of my life as I have known it, or the things I learned growing up? And so his books helped me to bridge all those gaps in my understanding and so on, and also helped me to better relate to other people who had questions or other aspects of life, you know, that where they were coming from. Of course, all of his music, I was so thrilled with the choir tonight singing, especially those songs. Our Ananda Chennai choir is also learning anew tomorrow, or they have learned it, and we're just now praying for altos. We don't have any altos yet, but then the song Peace. Swamiji sang that song in his tour of India, which he did in the last full year of his life, 2002 and early 2012 and early 2013. Every program he ended with peace and invited the audience to sing. And when he came to the city of Chennai, where we hadn't had a work at all, really, it had started a few months before, just having classes. When his talk was advertised, 3,000 people came. And so only about 2,000 could fit in the place, and the rest had to be turned away. And so when the only hint you get of this is in the beginning, that song Peace, he sang actually at the beginning that time, and the camera is panning to the whole room, and people are standing all around and so on. So it was actually because of that event that he said we should have a center here, just because of the huge turnout from the city. So Swamiji, of course, has also left us, and I don't know if he's left us these communities. We're very much an active part of these communities, but it's such a thrill because we all know what it's like to try to follow the spiritual path alone. We all know what it's like to read and to meditate, and we do our best, but when we come here, for example, on Sundays, when we have classes, when we meet other friends, I have a friend here, formerly from LA, as Nayaswami Haridas, for those of you who know him, he and his wife lead the center, Roma, lead the center in Bangalore, which is in India. He said, sometimes we heal each other at a glance. We walk into the temple, and just kind of, and then someone says, oh, good morning, and good morning. Just the energy comes up the spine, the heart starts to open up. I don't have to defend myself against that person. Okay, good morning. And it resets our week. And it's such a gift to have this opportunity. And I can't imagine you don't appreciate this, but this magnificent temple is such a testimony, the only temple of light in America. And as Master said, immortalize your ideals in architecture. And I, was never one for architecture. And I sort of thought, what does that even mean? And then when I saw the Temple of Light, I said, oh, that's what it means. Just seeing the building, you realize something big, something beautiful, something sweet is happening here. And it's very inviting also. All are welcome. I want to be a part of it. And so, in addition, though, Swami Kriyananda has left us his living presence. It's amazing for us to see in India, for example, and especially in Chennai, which is an unusual center. It's the last center that Swamiji founded during his lifetime, but almost none of our really active members, I shouldn't say almost, but very few of our active members ever met him. So if they missed that talk that night, then that was it. That was his only time there. And they have such a connection to Swamiji. It was really quite a surprise to Dharmini and me at first, because they loved his music, they loved, of course, his books, but they felt very close. Perhaps it was because they knew the rather dramatic story of him coming, and he said, I want a center here, so they felt that. But still, that's just an inspiration. It goes further. A member of ours who had wanted to meet Swamiji that night and knew about the talk, but for whatever reason wasn't able to go, and then basically missed his chance for a lifetime as he saw it, was feeling badly about that, as you might imagine. He went to Swamiji's home in Pune, which is another city in India, which was where we had our rural, community, and the retreat center is still there. Swamiji's home is there. And he went to visit that home, this member of ours. And while he was there, he was feeling that, sadness of, not being able to meet Swamiji in person. And he had a dream. It was sort of dream, vision, meditation. He wasn't sure what it was, but what he saw was Swamiji with a girl. And this girl was somehow misbehaving or something. And so the dream goes, Swamiji rose his hand to slap her, and then he instead just touched her on the cheek. And then my friend felt so healed by having that experience of Swamiji in a way that I, sort of understood, but not completely. But the denouement came later, when about some years later, the same friend, went through a very difficult test of his own. And then he suddenly remembered that same dream, and he realized Swamiji was saying, look, you have your karma, and it's coming at you. And would you rather face your karma out in the world with all the slaps, or would you rather just have it in community through your guru bhais, through, under my protection or master's protection, and just then it feels like a little touch like that. And so again, it's an interesting dream, but especially interesting for me is the fact that the man never met Swamiji. I had another friend. This was during Swamiji's lifetime, and this man was in India and hadn't met him. And he was involved with our meditation group in Bangalore. Now it's a center, but back then it was just a group. And this man, for whatever reason, was deciding that maybe he wanted to withdraw because something had happened and he basically got his feelings hurt. And so he thought, I'm going to just step away. So he composed an email to everybody saying, I'm sorry, friends, but due to family responsibilities, I am going to have to withdraw for some time. And he was just about to send it, and then he looked at the clock and thought, okay, it's 11 p.m., probably not a good time to send emails. Those late night emails, when you look at them in the next morning, just think, oh my God, thank God I didn't send that, or I sent that? And so he decided he'll hold off. And that night he had a dream, and he was working back in his old office at his computer at a cubicle. And as he was there, someone reached over the cubicle, wall and tapped him on the shoulder, and he looked up, and it was Swamiji. And Swamiji said to him, please don't withdraw. Your service is very much needed. And he gave him this beautiful smile. And so the man woke up and thought, okay, well, then I'll stay. But it's the thing for me most of all that Swamiji has given us, I can't say most of all, but maybe I can, is that he showed us what it is like for a soul to find God. Master told him, you will find God at the end of life. And whether he meant the last breath, then you will find God, or the last years, or the last decades even, I wonder, of life, he said, at the end of life you will find God. And so we, for those of you who met him, or for those of you who, of course, know him through all of his legacy of work, we know someone who found God. Of course, if you had met him, for many of us, that was apparent that if he hadn't found God, he was days away from finding God when we met him, partly because of just the joy that emanated from him. I'm sure many of you were here for his last visit to Seattle, and there was so much joy, so much love, and so much bliss in the room. That power was coming from him, and it was easy to feel and to take in and be inspired by. But it's also important to remember that his presence lives on and continues on. And he showed this even when he was in the body, that he could communicate without words. Myself and a friend were talking about something, and we decided we needed to ask Swamiji about it. And so I wrote an email, and the more I wrote, sort of explaining and justifying, and this is really why it has to be this way, but whatever you want. And then I sent the email, and as soon as I sent it, then we decided to meditate. And my friend said after the meditation, Swamiji doesn't want us to do that. And I said, yes, he does. He wants to do it because I want to do it. And so, but we'll wait for him to reply. And well, he didn't reply. But we met him a few weeks later at Ananda Village. And it was at a Crystal Hermitage at an open house tea. And as we were walking, we suddenly came to greet him, and he saw us. And he said, nice to see you. And I'm sorry I didn't answer your email, but I think you got my answer in your meditation. And so the story I want to leave you with, to end with, is actually something that first occurred to me. Master has said so many times, those who hang on to the end, not for sticking it out, but for the love of God, I or one of the other masters will be there to usher them into the kingdom of the infinite. And so sometimes we hang on for dear life for that beautiful promise. But I had that thought in my mind after Swamiji left the body, and after I stopped crying, and after I finally calmed down and sort of tuned into the bigger picture of his soul freedom, I realized that I was actually a little less afraid of death, because I knew at the time of death I would see Swamiji again. I just had that. It wasn't so much that I had that imagination or I hoped that it would be true. I just had that knowledge, that sort of certainty. We'll see if it's true. It's good to sometimes think about our passing, not so much in a morbid way, but in terms of, if there's anything that needs to be cleared out, time to clear it out. Now's as good a time as any. Swamiji wrote an essay called The Final Exam, and it's about death. And he gives you a whole list of exercises of, is there anyone who has wronged you in your lifetime? Think about those circumstances. Think about the hurt that you felt and so on. And then gives you a way to try to let it go, to see it as coming from God, to see God is the one trying to heal us of our attachments, helping us to let go and let them dissolve in the light. And so it's a very powerful thing to do even before death. To just sort of, I've got this, anchor in my heart, or this, let me see if I can pull some of these bricks out, because why hang on to these things even now? Then I can actually have a better life. I don't have to wait just for the end. I'll also mention, just because it happened this week, it's never too soon to kind of offer ourselves up to God. We never quite know when the appointed hour will come. And again, not to sort of live waiting for the clock to strike and that's it, but again, to live with as much of a clear heart as possible. I say that because I was at Ananda village in seclusion and went out for a walk. And there's, if those of you who know it, Bald Mountain, there's a hike you can go on and there's a beautiful view, and if you don't know it, then please go. It's just wonderful. Although, anyway, you'll hear all of my story first. So I went out there, and nice cheerful hike, and no cell phone, and didn't tell anyone I was going because I was in seclusion. What do I need a cell phone for, and so on. And I've been on this walk so many times, and got onto the boulder and took all the beautiful panoramic views and saw the river is down there, and went up into the sun, and that would be another nice view. So I was there for a little while and having a very lovely time. And I thought, well, I'll go back now. And I turned and I jumped off the boulder and landed. And there was this explosion of sound, like a water sprinkler going crazy. And it was a huge rattlesnake. And it was about 4 feet away from me. I landed right in front of it. And by God's grace, it was all straightened out and, not coiled. But as it was straightened out, it just came right for me. Just like, listen, this is my turf, I'm rattling and you're moving. And so I jumped back, my brain sort of thought, this is really happening. But that rattling sound, it was so loud. And so I jumped back onto the boulder, actually, and then sort of looked at it, and it kept on rattling, and then, started to go away, and, gave a few little extra rattles to make sure I got the point. And, I have this little tiny scratch on my pinky, instead of not being here. And so it was made me think a bit, when I was walking back afterwards. I mean, I'd been in seclusion for a week, and I thought, my gosh, this could have been it. I didn't even shave this morning, what an ignominious end. They just come find some dead mountain man, out there. So anyway, we never know when the time will come. But I want to share one last story, which is that, and some of you may have heard this, but it's a beautiful story of Nayaswami Brinde. And I think many of you know Brinde was at Ananda village. He was dying of cancer and a longtime member of Ananda. But at the time, which turned out to be the time of her passing, one of the members of Ananda village, everyone was taking turns praying with her, being with her, and so on. And it was a very strange circumstance. Basically, one of our members was called to be there in the room with her. That they needed some kind of technical assistance, and so they said, can you please wake up, and because we may need something. And so he was there, and the room was full. I'm not quite sure of what, presumably people, but in any case, when he got in there, he couldn't do the work that he was supposed to do. So he just sat down and meditated. And as he was meditating, and naturally he was praying for her, suddenly he had a vision. And he later said, this, I don't know if he said it's the only vision he's ever had in his life, but he's not given to visions or anything. He suddenly had a vision of Brinde standing up on her bed. And in one hand she was holding Master's hand, and in the other hand she was holding Swamiji's hand. And he saw them together standing on the bed, and then they left. And then, a moment later, somebody said, in the room, I think she's not breathing anymore. And it was the time of her passing. Interestingly, another friend who was very much involved in her passing had that same vision at that same time, but she, I think, was driving her car, somewhere else. So just to say that these things are real and that they're very much waiting for us. The last thought I want to leave you with is that it's so beautiful what you have done here in this community. It's so beautiful to see the lives you are leading. I can see the light in all of your faces. And it's a real inspiration because it's, we sometimes wonder, how am I doing? In fact, there was a title of an email I got today, or a few days ago. It said, "Have I been a good disciple?" And it was a beautiful quote of Swamiji's that Master, he said, "I will only ask Master at the end of my life, have I been a good disciple?" As opposed to feeling comfortable with all these accomplishments and all these things he's done for all of us. I will just want to know, have I been a good disciple? But it's kind of a good psychological test. Have I been a good disciple? And what's the knee-jerk reaction? Mine was, oh. And it's just not, it's not a good reaction. Because it's not true. We sometimes, and I don't mean about myself, I mean about all of us. We sometimes read, if you've read in the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna says that question, which I could certainly relate to, Krishna, now that you've told me all these different states of liberation, what happens to that devotee who doesn't make it? What if he doesn't find freedom in this lifetime? What happens then? And it's sort of like when reading it, the thought can occur like, okay, I better read this carefully because, this is for me. And Krishna says that he will be reborn with very good karma from his past spiritual practice. He'll have a life that will support him. He'll be born into wealth and other circumstances or other kinds of comforts, and he will quickly regain his spiritual path where he left off. So that is not a description of us in in this lifetime. It's a description of us in the last lifetime. You see, we didn't make it, I'm sorry, but rather self-evidently, we didn't make it. Here we all are. But what happened? We quickly picked up where we left off. You're only here now. We're only here now because we've been doing this for a long time. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be interested. It isn't that you somehow, hey, I think I'll finally be interested in seeking God seriously. Let's take Kriya Yoga. You sort of see a flyer about it and go, oh, I might want it. Nah, where's the TV? Your initial incarnations on the spiritual path are not about a lifetime of Kriya practice. It's like, hey, maybe 2 ohms and then I've had enough. So if that's what you've been doing, that shows a long history of lifetimes of spiritual practice and great connection to this. I think sometimes we think, well, but we should be having tours of the astral universe and we should be, at least levitating a few inches by now and all these things. But Swamiji even said, I don't think it's Divine Mother's will for us, because you would think with the dedication and meditation that I've seen among yogis here, he said that people would be having such experiences. But he said, let's face it, if we have a lot of those experiences, you don't really want to do anything else. And whereas it is our role in this yuga, in this time, to be bringing all of these teachings out into the world, first by living them, and not living in the Himalayas or, I guess, on Rainier, but by living with others who can see, okay, well, you are a yogi and you're not too weird, and okay, maybe I'm interested because you smile all the time. Master said that. You keep meditating and those who see your eyes will change. They'll be inspired by what you have. That's what I'm saying. I'm inspired to see the light in your faces because that tells the story, and that is transmitting the power of Master, the power of Swamiji, which is Master through him, through you, to others. And that's how we keep this thing going. But most of all, it's how we keep ourselves growing in the light. So I'd like to end by sharing another video of Swamiji. This was during his last visit to Seattle. And there are two videos. One shows him here in the temple, and the other, and then right after it, there's a short clip of him the day before at the community.
Now, I would like to sing a song for you, if you can stand it. Bring it closer so I can. Oh, that's what you mean. Yeah, put it here. Yeah. Okay. Love is all I know. Sun rays on this. I can't do it for you. I feel so much bliss sometimes. Anyway, I'll try again. Love is all I know. Sun rays on the snow of a winter long, in darkness without song. Oh, my heart's afire, burning all desire. Only you remain, and life again. Love is all I know. Sun rays on the snow of a winter long, in darkness without song. Oh, my heart's afire, burning all desire. Only you remain, and life again. Too long I did stray, flung lifetimes away. Imagined you did not care. I know now your smile was mine all the while. I listened and love was there. I can't breathe for love. All the stars above call to me, come home. Life's waves all end in foam. Only love can heal all the pain I feel. What a fool was I to turn away.
Just a moment. We're done here. And this is a little gift. Just a little gift of gratitude from all your friends here, Swamiji, with this card, and happy anniversary. From hundreds.
You know, I had my 64th anniversary this Wednesday, I think.
Yes, on the 12th.
Yeah. So pray for me that day. Okay.
Okay. Here, you take the flowers.
Here we go. Let him out.
Yeah, okay.
There we go. Boom. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. That's a beautiful tie. 5,000 years ago, it was preordained. You know, I don't think the hip problem is just due to Tina, but that is that hip operation. Okay, so nice to see you.
all Saturday at the event, 5 to 7 p.m. on Saturday. Blessings to all. Enjoy the rest of the food if you'd like to any longer. You're welcome.
At the temple and Bangladesh. There'll be a lot. Are you staying here? There'll be lots of people probably. And they've got the inside of the temple, and then there are two